Okay, now on to Marxism. Marxism, like functionalism, is a structuralist approach. That is, it sees society, by and large, constraining, controlling our way we think, the way we live, and that culture, norms, values, status, role, we could talk about rituals and ceremonies, is something that conforms us through socialization. And they're a macro approach in that they look at the large because they do not value the small or individual interpretation. It's about how the family operates, how mass media operates, to ensure that this culture keeps us conforming, how the education system operates, to the criminal justice system, and so on. It is a modernist approach. It very much is looking at the application of scientific principles. Marx himself talked about scientific socialism. It is a positivist approach in that it views and sees society and examines its society, implementing scientific method and approach. It is objective, not subjective. It is looking to be evidence-based. It is looking to look at the world through the prism of science and of being objective and looking at measurements and so on. It is a scientific approach, just like functionalism. It looks to observe and not to see the motivations of individuals within society. It looks at the collective rather than the individual. However, it differs from functionalism in a major way. It doesn't say that the values of our society are agreed on. It says they're imposed upon us, and that culture's job is to mystify us, like the Matrix. If anyone would like the film, I know it's pretty old now. It is responsible for pumping a non-reality to distort, like a mirror which has gone a bit wonky, to reflect a different reality than the one we're actually in. The best way I could think to say this is if you ever get the feeling that something's going on underneath that isn't what it appears on the surface in our society, on the news, if there is a separate agenda, if there's some, it is that sense. Think about Marxism. They say this is the reality of what's going on, but we're being told a different thing. What they think as the real base of our society, or in fact all capitalist societies, that is industrialized societies, or societies which have liberal democracy or the free market, it is money that moves everything. So money is the basis of all culture, and culture justifies this in different ways and obscures the fact that everything is about money. Their first key concept, very similar in some ways to the idea of the body analogy. If you remember, in functionalism, we talked about the body analogy and social institutions such as education, the family, mass media, politics, and religion, holding us together and being interdependent on each other and being as valuable to each other to pump round the system, culture, or value consensus, as the functionalists would have it. Here, what they're looking at is this is an unfair system. The base of our society is about the means of production, meaning if you own the means of production, you own everything and you control everything. And by means of production, what we're referring to here are the things that make things: factories, land, TV channels, the stuff that produces. If you own the stuff that produces, as opposed to earning your money on a wage or a salaried system, you are in control. This is fundamentally unfair, according to Marxists. And what they say is that the way in which education, the family, or these social institutions operate is to maintain and legitimate, that's a very Marxist term. It's the con, it's the fix, yeah, it's the thing that lies to us. It is the thing that obscures the reality of the majority's exploited status. Those that own the means of production, called the bourgeoisie, the fat cats, the capitalists, the people who run everything. Everyone else, the workers, are called the proletarians. How we are, so that's the idea of superstructure. Looking at the idea of ideology or capitalist ideology, this is another word, the Marxist term, if you like, for that culture which is being pumped around. To them, this is the con, this is the lie that we're all under, which in terms justifies the unjustifiable. We are told, as this image should say, that if you work hard at school, you apply yourself, you're bright enough, you get good exam results, you will get a good job with good pay. So the idea of IQ plus length of stay in education gets you your job or your position and status and social class. Whereas the reality is your social class or background determines your length of stay in education and so determines your IQ score. In other words, your social class background is the strongest determinant of your final class destination, meaning education is simply a slap on the back. It justifies the inequality between the bourgeois and the proletariat. It justifies a static, unfair system. The idea of meritocracy is that we can all achieve just the same. The reality is different. Some of us have a silver spoon in our mouth when we're born. Some of us have a leg up in life's race. It is not true. However, what it does do is if we all believe if we work hard at school and we all believe that we work hard in our jobs, we'll get promotion, who benefits? Arguably, or Marxists at least would argue, only the bourgeoisie, only those who own, only those that gain from the profit of your labor. And likewise, there are a number of myths. How this would apply to the health and health sector, what Marxists look at is this idea of medicalization. So instead of saying this geezer is working too long, too hard, likely to get a cold, likely to get ill, so therefore it is his working conditions and environment that make him ill, right? That is the reality. The way in which the health service obscures this inequality is to suggest it is the individual's responsibility for health, and that this man should go and take a pill or should do something to keep himself back at work, whereas it is the work that's making him ill. Feminism is also, to some degree, a structuralist approach. It is structuralist in that the concept of patriarchy is there. So patriarchy, like ideology, like value consensus, is a word for our culture. Ideology is about the justification of the exploitation of the masses by the few. Patriarchy is the justification of the exploitation or domination of one sex by the other. And it's a universal structural concept. There are many other aspects of feminism I won't go into here that are not structural for a good reason. But the idea of an overriding ideological cultural assault on women is this idea. It would explain things like the glass ceiling. That is why in a lot of organizations in 2020 Britain, you can see the organizational chart where there's a mix of genders until it gets to the top, and then it's all men. So how do we explain the fact that only 3% of the top 100 companies in the UK have, or sorry, 3% of boards in those companies have 3% of women on them? It is the idea of patriarchy. Again, looking at the health and social care sector, back in the day, those that tended the ill, the sick, or were midwives were mainly women. They then, during a period of time called the witch craze from about 1450 to 1750, were hunted and killed. We see today a medical profession dominated by men. Even gynecology, which you would have thought would be predominantly women, has a mainly male cohort of operators or qualified physicians, showing that really